Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Tooways to Skin a Cat, a show where we talk career experiences, entrepreneurship, and investments. The main aim is to show that there's more than one way to be successful other than just climbing the corporate ladder. My name is always Asmal. We are live on LinkedIn and YouTube, and the show will be available on podcast by tomorrow. For those listening on Apple Podcast or on Spotify, please leave a rating for the podcast. Now, if you are joining us live, drop a one in the comments so that we know we're not talking to ourselves, and drop a two in the comments if you're watching the recording. So my guest for this week is Sean Cohen. He's a wealth manager and a financial advisor, and offshore investments are one of his main focuses. He also shares a lot of his knowledge on LinkedIn. Sean, thanks so much for joining me today.
Always, thank you so much for having me. It is such a pleasure to be on. I'm so honored to be on, to be speaking to yourself and all the people who just dropped a one in the comments. You, my sort of people, the people who stay after hours on a Thursday to maybe learn a thing or two. So really, really excited to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Let's jump straight into the meat of it. Tell us your story. Where do you come from? And maybe even outside of work, who is Sean Cohen? Give us that backstory.
Quite a story. Let me maybe start off by doing something unconventional and moving my laptop here and showing you where I'm based. Maybe you can see the view from outside of my office window there. It's the back
Now
of
you're making us jealous.
that's the point. If there's anyone watching from Joburg, can be very jealous. So that is the back of a very famous mountain here in the most beautiful city in the world, Cape Town City, and I will die on this hill. It is the most beautiful city in the world. It's the place I was raised. It's the place that I've lived all my life. It's the place that I plan to stay all of my life, hopefully. Currently, I am a private wealth manager, as you just said, for an independent financial advisory firm known as Carrick Wealth. Essentially, a wealth manager is a fancy term for an individual who looks after, preserves, and helps grow individuals' wealth. And like you mentioned, I have an expertise and a speciality in dealing with offshore investments. Okay. So ever since I was about 15 years old, when I first read Napoleon Hill's classic Think and Grow Rich, I became really fascinated by the differences in behaviors and psychology of individuals who can get wealthy and individuals who are just not able to accumulate wealth despite the fact that they can earn really well. Now, we obviously live in a very, very unique country where there's a stark economic divide between the haves and the have-nots. And you can drive down one road, look to your left and see abject poverty, and look to your right and see an enormous amount of opulence. And that's not really the disparity in wealth that I took an interest to. That's a political discussion. We can have that at another stage. The wealth disparity that really fascinated me, always, is people who are earning really, really well. There are people today, maybe people listening on this call today, who are earning the same income. And through sheer behavior and mentality and habits and psychology, one of them in 25 years' time is going to be very, very wealthy. And the other one is going to be a prisoner in their job. They're going to continue needing to work in order to be able to sustain their lifestyle. And that fascinated me from a young age. I don't know why, but whatever reason is, I took an interest to. So naturally, I gravitated towards financial services. And so, of course, I did the prerequisite, the Bachelor of Commerce from University of Cape Town, followed it up, graduated cum laude with an honors degree in financial analysis and portfolio management, and shortly after landed a job at an incredible discretionary fund manager where the job was really, really great, but it became quite clear to me that I wasn't going to be able to have an impact directly on people's lives by managing a fund. And so I did something a little bit crazy, and it's not something that you should try at home. Definitely don't take my advice on this, but it tended to work for me. I packed a suitcase. I bought a one-way ticket to the most foreign country I could possibly think of, Vietnam. And I didn't have a job, I didn't have a place to stay, and I didn't really have a plan. And I just jumped on that plane after a year at my previous job just to try to figure out what it is that I want to do with my life. You know, when you're young, you think you got it all sorted. You really, really don't until you get into the field. And so when I was there, I did a few odd teaching jobs here and there, just gave myself time to travel and think. And quite fortunately, I managed to network and create a great relationship with a very influential man in in Hanoi who owned a private school called Clever Learn Van Quan. And he had the idea for a course called Global Citizens. And this course really intrigued me because Vietnam has a history of socialism and communism. And his course on Global Citizen was to try to teach some Western values to a lot of individuals, university students, and of course adults who took an interest to capitalism and making money and starting a business and that sort of thing. And I managed to convince him, for whatever reason, that I was the right guy to take up this course, and he gave me a shot, and thankfully it was a big success, to the point where we had to start rejecting. I think there was hundreds of applicants at a stage we had to start rejecting. So that was my time in Vietnam. I could write a book, a memoir, just on what it's like to live in Vietnam. It is a crazy, crazy place. But in essence, my love for South Africa got me, and I decided after a year I needed to come back and I needed to help people with their wealth. And so I found one of the most reputable wealth managers that I could find, Carrick Wealth. And here we are, 6 years later. I'm still a private wealth manager. I've grown a little bit on LinkedIn. I've got a little bit of an audience there where I post content. I've got a newsletter with a few thousand subscribers on a weekly basis. I do some seminars to educate young professionals how to invest. And the most important thing for me is that I make an impact on my clients' lives.
Amazing, amazing. So I'm not going to bury the lead. I'm going to ask the question that people wanted me to ask. And that is the question that most young professionals want to know is, how do I make more money, and how do you help with that?
So the question of how do I make more money, or how does my money make more money, are two different questions. Okay. So from the time, we're a few years out of the womb, we've already been trained. There's a whole schooling system designed for us. By the time we're so high, we get put into the schooling system to be trained and educated to one day become an employee. It's important. I'm not saying school's not important. However, the primary purpose of it is to teach you how to make money. Then we go hopefully get a tertiary education where we can specialize in one industry or one field, and we can learn again how to make money. Then we get into the workforce, and what do? We make money, and we are incentivized to climb the corporate ladder and make more money and get better titles, and we're in this rat race, and no one ever stops to say, why? What is the point? If you have to ask a question at school, if you have to ask one of your teachers, okay, I'm going to make all this money. I understand you're training me to become an employee or whatever the case is, but what do I do with the money? They'll say, you're on your own. Figure it out. Okay. And so it's really, really important that people know that the management of your money is a very different topic to you making your money. And that's where I come in. You making money, you can start businesses, you can educate yourself more to climb the corporate ladder. It depends on the field, it depends on your job. Work ethic is always going to be required. Knowledge and expertise is required. Some chutzpah is required. You need to have a little bit of courage to be able to take risks. But ultimately, at the end of the day, if you're not accumulating wealth, then you are just on a hamster wheel. So I don't know if that answered your question, but that's my.
It's given the right perspective. So I take it, as a wealth manager and as an investment advisor, you've seen hundreds, if not thousands, of clients, some young, some old. What financial mistakes do you see professionals make consistently, and what do you have any tips on how they can fix that?
Well, firstly, it ties into the previous answer. Financial literacy is critically low in South Africa. It's really low all over the world. But, when I do these young professional seminars on a quarterly basis, oftentimes I'm tempted to go in there and give them investment strategies, but they're actually just starving for the investment basics. They don't understand what is a retirement annuity, what is a tax-free savings account, what does diversification mean, what does it mean to pay yourself first. They don't understand the basics of it. So the biggest mistakes I see is that no one's ever taken the time to read a book or consult with an expert on what it actually means to make money. I actually did a post on this the other day. Sometimes my brain goes a bit wild when people ask me questions, and the only way I can capture all these thoughts is in my notepad on my iPhone. It's one of my favorite apps other than LinkedIn. And I wrote down 7 mistakes that people make. And I don't think I'll be able to read them all off the top of my head, but number one is not knowing your numbers. If you don't know on a monthly basis exactly what percentage you need to be putting away every single month to hit a predefined wealth goal at a predefined age, so that you can live with a predefined level of income with a predefined tax rate till a predefined date of death, you could say, so that you know how many years you're going to be retired. You don't know that number, I guarantee you're going to miss. I can promise you right now, you are never going to hit any sort of financial freedom. You first need to know the maths. Unfortunately, personal finance is a very, very cruel topic, because it doesn't really care about your circumstances, as harsh as that is to say. Doesn't matter if you're privileged or not privileged. Doesn't matter if you've got a good job or a bad job, or if you're smart or not smart. At the end of the day, the maths doesn't lie. And so you need to take personal accountability of knowing your numbers and working towards that. A few other ones, I'm not going to spend half an hour talking about all the mistakes, but another one is relying too much on willpower rather than relying on systems. I'm a financial advisor. My job is literally telling people how to invest their money. And even I am tempted, when I get a big paycheck, if I get a big bonus or a big commission or a big salary, I am tempted not to invest it. I also have wants. I want to go buy myself some good Liverpool clothes or whatever the case is. The latest shirt. Always, I can tell that you're definitely not a Liverpool supporter there. But if I'm struggling, then how is everyone else who doesn't know about all the mental biases and heuristics that we've got meant to actually have the discipline every single month for 30, 40 years, which is the time horizon we're looking at, put away money? You need to create a debit order the day after payday. This is what's known as paying yourself first. You will spend whatever's in your bank account. It's just a law. If there is 100,000 in your bank, you will spend it. If there's 20,000 in your bank, you will spend it. If you first start off by working out your numbers and automatically transferring that to an investment account every single month, you will find a way to live off the remainder. You really, really will. So those are a couple mistakes. There's a lot more. Maybe one I'll just mention in passing is, don't associate with people who attach self-worth and self-value to the value of their things. Okay? Material things is not the same as being a person of worth. Okay.
That's a great point, and it follows up to my next question. Some of us come from homes where we had no financial education. So when we start working, we are probably the first to get into a professional environment, and sometimes it feels like swinging in the dark and hoping for the best. We weren't taught how to manage money. So, based on your experience, from what age should one start taking financial planning seriously?
That is such a good question. I would say that financial planning should be, although it's not taught in schools, that the concept of creating wealth through investing is only often actually discussed by the time it's already too late, by the time you start thinking of retirement. Certainly the latest you should start talking about it is when you get your first job. When you get your first job and you're earning your first paycheck, you have got this beautiful opportunity that life gives all the youth. They give the beautiful opportunity of time. Okay, there's no replacement for time. There is absolutely nothing for it. You cannot catch up by investing in better investments if you start investing too late. It just doesn't work like that, unfortunately. So the earlier you start, the better. There is no predefined time. I would say that from the time a parent has a child that is 8 years old and they're now old enough to start understanding the basics of how money works, you can start teaching them basic principles. And that's obviously the parent's responsibility. If your parents haven't done that, then you need to start doing it today. Someday doesn't exist. Today is someday.
It's interesting what you say. And that first paycheck, at that point, you haven't developed your habits yet of how you're going to spend your money. That's something that I learned, that I started those bad habits too soon, and it was very difficult to get out of it. But yeah, you have to.
And just to touch on that, habits is something that you need to have automated. A lot of the time, I will find myself spending more money than I really should. And I feel like a hypocrite because all I do is tell everyone don't spend on silly, frivolous stuff, right? But it's okay. So what I do at the beginning of each month is I have a predefined amount I'm going to put away into my investment and into my savings. And the rest of it is for me to spend however I choose. So it takes away the responsibility off my shoulders. And then I don't need to be, so disciplined. I can spend it on anything if I want to, as long as I've paid myself first.
I hear you. For the audience, we'll be responding to questions towards the end. So please add your questions to the comment section now so that we don't miss them. So, Sean, I've noticed you on LinkedIn quite a bit in the last few months, more than say a year ago and the year before. And I've been on LinkedIn for a good couple of years. So, or maybe your content just started jumping on my algorithm. But why did you decide to create more content on LinkedIn?
I'd love to say it was some altruistic need to educate the public, but if I'm totally honest with you, as of the start of 2023, I had a New Year's resolution that I was going to post every single working weekday on LinkedIn, and it was going to be good for my business, and it certainly has been. I've gained a lot of clients from it. I've gained a lot of exposure, get opportunities like this. What a wonderful opportunity. And as a side benefit at the beginning was I could educate my audience. It's now kind of flipped on its head, where I don't necessarily need to be going out and searching for new business all the time. I've got other initiatives for that. For me at the moment, it's a passion project. I really enjoy creating content, and I really, really live for those moments when somebody has that light bulb switch. Potentially it doesn't have to necessarily be LinkedIn. It could also be on a podcast like this. That moment that is that breakthrough when someone just needed someone to say the right thing at the right moment. I was walking in Hermanus a few months ago, and someone stopped me while I was at Pear Tree restaurant, and they out of the blue, Sean Cohen, oh my gosh, what a great coincidence to see you here. I follow you on LinkedIn. I loved your advice on this. Met someone in Bootleggers downstairs where I work who actually pulled out his phone and pulled out a quote of something I said. Is that this was just what I needed to hear in my life right now. So it didn't start off altruistic. It started out because it was a business building activity, but it has become a bit more about helping others, which is obviously much, much more satisfying.
Amazing. I want to just double click on one of the things you mentioned earlier in terms of financial freedom. I mean, let's say somebody is a normal professional. They may be not in the C-suite, but they've been a professional for the last few years. So they're just a normal professional. But with all these costs going up every year, is financial freedom still possible for a normal professional?
That is a loaded question, Tooways. Financial freedom is definitely possible, because financial freedom isn't an exact nominal figure. Financial freedom essentially means that you're able to live passively off the growth and interest of your investments, right? So it's a lot easier to achieve financial freedom if you're able to earn a very high income and you have very low expenses, because that way it's easy to put away a large amount every single month into an investment, and in a very short space of time, through compound growth and through contributions, you're going to have a very big nest egg, which is going to, just based purely on interest and dividends and growth, be able to pay for your very small lifestyle. But obviously, I'm not recommending everybody just eats noodles every day. There has to be a little bit of a balance. You have to live as well. I'm a big proponent of cutting the expenses which are unnecessary. For me personally, I'm not in the fanciest car by far. I drive a Volkswagen Polo. I can afford a lot better, but I don't want to. I'm just not a car guy. I would rather, on that big ticket item, not spend too much money. It's fully paid off. I don't have a car payment, whatever. On my apartment, the rent I pay on my apartment is very affordable for me. I could, like a lot of people, decide I wanted to live somewhere better. I choose not to. And by doing so, I'm able to save a lot more each month. And if you know your numbers and you have a long period of time, you're not starting at the age of 55, financial freedom is definitely possible. One thing I will say, though, is people focus a lot on cutting expenses. You'll find a lot of financial advisors, they'll say, you need to cut expenses, you need to stop spending, you need to stop buying coffees. I buy coffee every morning. I love coffee. Focus more on income. And then when it comes to expenses, focus on cutting the big ticket items. Things like properties and cars and things that are unnecessary, that you're spending to impress others, okay? Or overseas holidays. cut on those and focus a lot on increasing your income. Get a side hustle if you must, study further to get a better paying job. Whatever the case is, focus on your income. Be very disciplined to ensure that you set up the right system so you actually capture and keep that income you earn as well.
Great advice. I'm going to move over to questions because I see they are flooding in. This is a big question, but from Davita, who says, how does one go about investing offshore? I know you can't go into all the details, but at least give us somewhere where we can start.
So for everybody listening at home, Davita is my beautiful girl. So thank you very much for that, hun. I love you. She told me that she might throw in a little bit of a curveball. That is a loaded question in itself, but I'll tell you very quickly the framework that one needs to have. And sorry, by the way, for the awning coming down while I'm speaking. Yeah, I hope you can still hear me. So first of all, you need to understand the difference between true offshore and offshore, aka offshore exposure. Okay, so a lot of people in South Africa, they think they have offshore investments, but what they really have is offshore exposure. Okay, so in your retirement annuity, when your tax-free savings account, on your local unit trust, on your local platform, you can track offshore markets, oftentimes through what's known as a feeder fund. Okay, but these are still denominated in rands, and the money still sits here in South Africa. Okay, so you get the benefit when the rand depreciates and when global markets grow. You get the benefit of those offshore investments. However, you're taxed on the rand depreciation, and if you ever wanted to take the money out the country because you emigrated, or you want your children to inherit the money because they're out of the country, you have to go through the Reserve Bank and get clearance. So it's not true offshore. Okay, but it's a great start. Don't get me wrong. I'm a fan of offshore exposure, but over a certain point, you want to start investing directly outside of the country, getting your rands, converting them into foreign currency, US dollar, euros, or Great British pound, something like that, and actually taking it and investing it into a foreign jurisdiction. Okay, and that it requires, if it's under R1 million, just simply chatting to a guy like myself, it's very easy to do. If it's more than R1 million, then you have to get clearance from the South African Reserve Bank, known as the application for international transfer. I can speak for hours on this topic, but hopefully that just touches on the main points there. So thanks very much for that, love.
And then we've got another question from Matthew, who's clearly a big fan, but he's got a very. I'm going to read it from here. Who says, if humans stopped valuing money tomorrow and instead only valued happiness, how would you structure a portfolio to maximize returns in happiness?
Oh, goodness me. That is a great question. How would I structure the portfolio? Well, first of all, happiness is very relative in terms of what it means from one individual to the next. So I don't think I'm the right person to necessarily say how everybody can be happy. But one thing's for sure, it's not working in a job that you dislike on a daily basis. It's finding a purpose. It's finding people that you love and are like-minded and spending as much time with them as possible, doing whatever it is that you like to do for a good purpose, wherever you like. And I'd say I'd have to add travel in there. So very unique question, Matthew. Thanks so much. Big fan of your line of thinking here.
I can't disagree with that travel point. It's done wonders for me. But any last few words from you, or anything we didn't discuss that you'd like the audience to know?
I would say a big topic for a lot of people is they might be sitting here thinking, well, okay, great, Sean, you've convinced me I need to start taking my money more seriously, but where do I get started? And I'd like to just say that whether you know it or not, every single person already has a financial advisor. Okay, whether you know it or not, either you're doing it through conformity, you're getting financial advice through conformity because your friends and your family and your co-workers, they all spend money in a certain way, and without you knowing it, you're following suit. Or you're getting direct advice, maybe your mate at a braai who tells you to buy Trump coin, which I don't recommend. Okay. Or heaven forbid, TikTok or Instagram, whatever the case is, 99% of advice out there and habits out there are not done by people or provided by people who are going in the direction you want to be going to. So be very, very careful about where you get your advice from. find somebody in real life, not on the internet, who you can trust, that your gut can trust, okay, who can see the world the way that you see it and is willing to be honest with you. They don't necessarily have to be funny or a nice personality or good looking, but they must be honest with you, okay? And yeah, I think that's a very critical point, and you have to trust them with your gut. That's a critical point. There's a lot of attributes of a wealth manager that are important, like knowledge and regulation, all this stuff. They're necessary, but they're not sufficient. You need to be able to trust them, and they need to be ethical.
Trust them with your gut. That is a saying that I'm going to steal. So I think that is it's a great way for the show to end. The show has been live on YouTube and should be available on podcast by tomorrow. If you're watching on YouTube or the podcast and you feel that it's added value, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click on that notification bell to get automatically notified when the next episode comes out. Sean, thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Thank you so much, Wes. Really appreciate you having me on here. Have a fantastic day, and I look